This story starts when I got involved with the local party around 1995, 1996. Chairman Tom Sliney came to me one day and he said, Sid, there's a forum in South County and we'd like to send you. And not being really smart, it took me a while to figure out what he meant. What he meant was there's a debate in a homeowner community where everybody is a liberal Jew and they already have a Democrat and they need a punching bag with the title of Republican. Will you do that? And I said, I'm in. And I went. And then I came back. And Tom said, well, how'd you do? And I said, Tom, I have good news for you. And he said, what's that? I said, there were no votes for me to lose. And then I went back. And I went back for 15 years. And when I say I, it started as I, but it wasn't I. Because every time I went back, the group got bigger. Joyce Kaufman would introduce me and say, Sid started all by himself and now he has an army. How did that happen? And that's what happened. Because I would go to those communities and I would say, find your voice. Because I knew in that room, I'd go to one of those things, some guy would come up to me and say, Sid, I'm the only Republican in the room. And I'd say, no, you're not. Because I have the voter lists. But none of you have the courage to speak because your liberal neighbors are bullies. And I'm here to give you the courage and to ask you to find your voice. And that's what I did. And all of a sudden, you fast forward, and here we are in 2012. And we knew, me, my board, the leadership, we knew that Barack Obama was vulnerable in the Jewish community. You didn't have to be a genius to know it. You only had to read a newspaper. But it wasn't enough to know it. You couldn't just make a speech. You had to go do something with it. So we did. And the first thing, well, the biggest thing, was our vice chairman, Margie Helsheim, went to the Romney people and said, instead of the 2 victory offices that we get, give me another office. I'm going to put it at Glades and 441 in the belly of the beast. 100% Jewish liberals in those communities. I want an office right where they live. We're going to walk, we're going to call, we're going to do all the things that get votes from people who feel like they've been disenfranchised. And the Romney people, true to form, said, no. You have your 2 offices. So Margie and I put our hands in our own pockets. That meant she put her hands in the pockets of the Boca Raton Republican Club, and I put my hand in the pocket of the Republican Party of Palm Beach County, and we opened that office, a storefront on a shopping center, 441 in Glades. That first day, it was a Saturday afternoon that we opened the office. They wouldn't send Rudy Giuliani to our office. They sent him to the other office. We said, could he come over afterwards? No, okay. So we didn't even have celebrities. We had me and Peter Feynman and Ira, but we didn't have celebrities, okay? But we had 250 Jewish people show up from that neighborhood. People who were like on a desert island waiting for the water to come. They were starving. They were alone. And we came. And then we had Alan Bergstein. And a couple of years ago, Alan said, Sid, I need a title. I said, okay, you are the chairman of Jewish Outreach for the Republican Party. And he got his friend Tom Trento, and they went to all the synagogues and all the homeowner groups, and they said, we challenge you to a debate on whether or not Barack Obama is good for Israel. And they did everything you would think of stereotypical Jewish people doing. They insulted each other, they yelled, they screamed, they blamed each other for Hitler, all the things Jewish people do to each other, okay? And it got on television, and it made the media, and it got in the newspapers, and Alan got himself thrown out of an event before he even walked into one of them. This was great stuff, because all of a sudden, the Jewish community was being confronted with the fact that, one, there was a choice, and two, we were not being bullied anymore. We were as much on offense as they were. So how did it all work out? Palm Beach County got 33,000 more votes for Mitt Romney than we got for John McCain. No Republican county in the state came close to that amount of additional votes. Actually, every other large Republican county in the state fell off a cliff. And there we were, in front, presented at the state committee meeting in December, and there's Palm Beach County, nobody in second place. We added 4 points. We went from John McCain's 37% to Mitt Romney's 41%. If the whole country had added 4 points, I'd be going to the inaugural next week. Okay? That's the job we did. Why did we do that job? Because we took a disenfranchised minority, and we knew we had a problem, and we said, we will do it. And the sad part of course, the Republican Party said, we won't. So we did it, and they didn't, and we have the results, and the rest of the state lost the electoral votes. Wasn't much harder than that. The failing of the Republican Party, pay attention to this, the failing of the Republican Party is we compete for an increasing share of a decreasing market, that being white people. Every time you hear a talking head, every time you read an article, their premise is faulty. The article is saying this is how you get more white votes. Peggy Noonan wrote this article last week, basically said if you would just be Democrats, we'd have more Republicans. I know Peggy Noonan. I like Peggy Noonan. She missed it. All her friends are white. So she didn't understand. So I'm saying you here today, it's not that I don't want more white votes, but I don't want more white votes. Mitt Romney got a greater share of the white vote than Ronald Reagan. How many more white votes do you want? The problem with the extra white votes is you have to sell yourself out to get it. Oh, you guys, well, you could have my vote if you just got off those social issues. I'm like, you know what? I'm not pro-life because of my religion. I'm pro-life because you won't stand up for the babies, so somebody has to, so I take it on myself. Well, if we say we're going to throw them overboard, who's going to stand up for the babies? Nobody's going to, so I don't want to throw it overboard, so I don't want the next white vote. So that's why I'm here today, is basically to say that and to ask a fundamental question. Who needs us more in this country? Riviera Beach or Palm Beach? And when you figure the answer out to that question, you understand the fallacy of the Republican Party. We don't believe our values enough to share them with the people who need them the most. And you need to think about that. And then you need to think that the way the liberals have gotten us to think about minorities is the way liberals think of minorities, as people who aren't totally worthy. Liberals think that, so they say, we're going to give you affirmative action, we're going to give you a food stamp, we're going to give you all the things that you need because we, the liberals, don't think you can compete in a level society. And we get defensive about that? You look at the comparisons of the cities, Philadelphia or Bryn Mawr, Cleveland or Shaker Heights, Newark or Princeton. I don't want more votes in Princeton. Mitt Romney raised $1 billion, and he spent every dollar on people who were going to vote for him if he didn't spend a cent. Am I right about that? I watch TV every night or whenever, and I'd say, oh, there's another ad. He's spending X dollars for my vote. He didn't need my vote. We don't only preach to the choir, we preach to the preachers. This is our great fallacy. We don't have the belief in our message. So then all of a sudden you got the emails after the election. You learned all about Philadelphia and Cleveland, right? You learned that they had all those precincts with 100% vote for Barack Obama, right? Everybody saw that. Okay, so the first question I asked when I saw it, I'm a county chairman, I said, where were the poll watchers? We have poll watchers. No, you don't. Okay, no we don't. You're right. Where were the poll watchers? The poll watchers weren't there. So here's what happened. The Republicans abandon the cities and say we can't get more than 10% of the black vote, it's not worth it. And then Barack Obama's on the ticket, and now we're saying, oh, we can't get more than the 4% of the black vote, it's definitely not worth it. So then we don't even send the poll watchers who say, well, I'm afraid. something bad might happen. I'm sitting here saying, are you kidding? You're 10 minutes from Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and you're afraid? What kind of American are you? That's not how it works. So they don't show up. So now the 100% of the vote isn't 100% of the vote that he got. It's 150%. Right? Because they're there all alone. What about all those people who didn't show up to vote? Look at that. Their signatures are there. Their votes were cast. This is magic. They didn't even have to make it to the polls. So we didn't just give up the last 4%. We gave up 50% of all the extras that they threw in. Why? Because we don't believe enough in what we believe in. One of the things that worked for us in this county, we had the RJC, the Republican Jewish Coalition. Ira's daughter works for them. The RJC is a wonderful organization. I send them $1,000 a year. I sometimes speak for them, and it's like my favorite nonprofit organization. Okay, they came down here and they realized they had a budget, $6.3 million. Where'd they get the budget? They got it from their members. Okay, this is important. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But okay, so they came down here. They had $6.3 million to spend in counties with significant Jewish populations that were in swing states. Believe me, you take that criteria, we're it. We're it. Okay, so they put up the billboards. Oy vey, Barack Obama had enough. Those were their billboards. They brought in Giuliani and Norm Coleman and John Bolton and all the people. And I'd come to those things and I'd speak at their events, and there'd be 700 Jewish people there cheering for the Romney surrogates. 700. I remember when there were 7. You see how this stuff works? Because they found their voice and we had the right candidate. And we couldn't have done it with Hillary because for whatever reason, Jewish people are still so irrational they think the Clintons like them. They don't, but you can't convince them of that. So I'm saying, where were the billboards in Philadelphia? The ones that said, black unemployment, 14%. Had enough? Black babies born out of wedlock, 70%. Had enough? Single biggest reason for death of young black men, other young black men. Had enough? Sexually transmitted diseases among young single black women, 50%. Had enough? Where were our billboards? We raised $1 billion. We didn't have one billboard. We didn't have one message. We didn't have one ad. We didn't go one. The assumption that we have is they don't want us or need us because the liberals convinced us of that. They are so wrong. A few weeks after the election, Sean Jackson, who runs our South Florida Black Caucus, put 50 black people, can't use a party name, in a room at the West Palm Beach Library. I was down there. I wasn't speaking, so I only spoke for a couple of minutes. Put 50 people in a room. I'm guessing of the 50 people, maybe 10 voted for Romney. Certainly more than half were registered Democrats. And they all had one thing in common. They all hated the Democratic Party. But they had no other place to go. There was no chairman coming down saying, find your voice. There was no chairman saying your children, your daughters don't have to grow up to live on welfare and your sons don't have to grow up to go to jail, which is what Democrats do for your cities. So I have this concept that I talk about that I'm going to talk about right now, which is called peeling. But before I get to that, I want to go back one little section and say, if I were running for president of the United States, I would hold a rally at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. And I would talk about two-parent families and sexually transmitted diseases and unemployment and schools we call dropout factories. And I would say to that audience the same thing I said to those Jewish people 15 years ago. I don't really care if there's not a single vote for me in this audience. I'm going to talk about the things our country needs to talk about. And then you can decide you don't want to vote for me. One speech at the Apollo is worth 100 speeches in the suburbs of Ohio for the Republican Party. The Democrats have only one issue, which they used successfully against Romney, and they've already started using against Governor Scott. And the issue is Mitt Romney doesn't like people like you. Rick Scott doesn't like people like you. That's 100% of their campaign. Not jobs, not deficits, not taxes, not unemployment, not anything. Mitt Romney doesn't like people like you. Well, let me tell you, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but the real failure of the Republican Party is Mitt Romney didn't go to where you live to talk about the things that are ripping your community apart. Blacks were once all Republicans, and I can't say they were rich, but I can say they had two parents for their children. And now they're all Democrats, and they're just as poor, and they're lucky if they have one parent. So I have this concept called peeling, because I'm not here telling us to go get 80% of the black vote or the Hispanic vote or any other vote that doesn't seem to like us. I'm here to say that the day that you get 20% of the black vote and a third of the Jewish vote, they don't have to open the polls. We're a permanent Republican majority. And once you realize how easy this is, it's like, well, how come we never thought of that before? And the answer is because we never thought of it before. And they still aren't thinking of it because you read Peggy Noonan, and not once did Peggy Noonan say, hey, we got the message, we just need to talk to a different audience. Right? Our guys believe us already, and they don't need us. We're already doing well, or better at least. Okay, let's talk about peeling. So if you're talking to Jewish groups, you don't really care about the person in Century Village who was born a Democrat and has never voted for a Republican in 60 years because you're not getting her vote. It's not that you don't want it, you're not getting it. You couldn't pander enough to get her vote. But her grandchild's vote, you can get that one. They'll listen to you. In the Jewish community, there are three peels. That's P-E-E-L. Young, affluent, and orthodox. Michael Horowitz taught me that one day. He said, Sid, why does the RJC waste their time at Century Village? He said, when everybody's a Democrat. He said, come to my Orthodox synagogue where we're 50-50 and get the other 50. They all love Israel. You see? And that's what happened in the last election. We went down there, we got 33,000 votes. I tell all my friends, I say, you know those 33,000 votes? I know where every one of them came from. They were all Jewish. That's because that was what was there in this election. We'll have other opportunities in the next election because, trust me, Barack Obama's not going to be on the ticket, you see. So there are other opportunities. Let's talk about the black community. There are real peels in the black community. Number one is Caribbean. For those of you who don't know this, the only thing that the Caribbeans have in common with the African Americans is the color of their skin. Caribbeans have more in common with my grandparents. They left their homeland with nothing. They came here for opportunity. Their family is together. They go to church on Sunday, and they want their kids to grow up to be productive Americans, not on welfare, not on food stamps, not with a gimme, gimme mentality. And it's hard because they get here and they have to live in poor areas, and the poor areas have a huge amount of African Americans who are run by the Reverend Masters here in Riviera Beach, or the Jesse Jacksons or the Al Sharptons, who say to them, no, you have to learn how to hate white people. And then you have to learn how to vote for the people that keep your kids poor. And there's no other voice. So the Republican Party is either going to be that voice or we're not going to be anything. Second thing in the black community, Chamber of Commerce. There's always a black chamber of commerce. There are multiple Hispanic chambers of commerce. You think these are Obama people? Are you kidding? Small business people, the small business community is being decimated by Obama, and by the way, quite intentionally, because he can't control small business. He can only control Citibanks and all the crony capitalists. So small business people are free. So you have to put them out of business. So they have a chamber of commerce. They have business owners. They have gun owners. People like us who understand that, let me tell you, I live in Ballin Isles. You don't have to own a gun in Ballin Isles. The guys at our gates own guns. But you live in the inner cities, and you're honest and you're hardworking, you need to own a gun. It's just, you need to own a gun. I'm not going to do the whole gun control thing. I can, but I'm not going to because I don't want to get off the thing. Two-parent families. Let me tell you the single easiest thing in the black community. 70% of black children are born out of wedlock. Everybody knows that. Here's the part they never say. Let me say this clearly. 30% of black children are not. They are born to two-parent families, and every one of them should be a Republican voter. And if every one of them was a Republican voter and nothing else changed in this country, we would win every election, 50 states. You see how simple this is? They are sitting there like those Jewish people were down in West Boca, waiting for us to say, we can help, and we want you at the table. And we don't say it. And everything you read doesn't say it. So I'm here saying it, and hopefully somebody else will figure it out. In the Hispanic community, there are Hispanic, large numbers of Hispanics who are Catholic with what I call a capital C. You know what I mean? Meaning they take their religion seriously. Those are our voters. Barack Obama is not only anti-Catholic, he went out of his way to try to humiliate the structure of the Catholic religion over a silly issue like birth control pills, which are virtually free. They have their chambers, they have their business owners, and by the way, for both Hispanics and Catholics, show me a kid, a Hispanic or a black kid, in a charter school or a private school, and I will show you a Republican family. They just don't vote for us. Do you know what we had to go through, we, the Republicans in Florida, to get charter schools because they couldn't get a single Democratic vote? Do you know that the NAACP vigorously opposes all forms of school choice? Why? Because they get money from the NEA, the teachers' union, to sell their kids and not to let them out of the dropout factories. If the black community leadership wanted school choice, they would have it tomorrow. The NAACP could go to Washington and say, give our kids school choice, get them out of the dropout factories, and an hour later, every person in Congress would vote for it. But it's the opposite. They go to Washington, they say, keep them in the dropout factories so we can keep getting money from the NEA. And where are we? And that's my point. Of course, you hear that point over and over again. Places we should be, citizenship ceremonies. When they have citizenship ceremonies in places like Miami, the Democrats are there every time. They give them the registration form and it already says Democrat on it. And you know what they say to these people who come in, mostly from the Caribbean or Latin America? They say, well, you came to America for democracy, and we're Democrats, so you're us. That's literally verbatim what they say. Okay. What we need to do at the same ceremony is have the little card that says, take the test. Take the test. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? Are you pro-jobs or pro-food stamps? Do you believe in families or gangs? Do you believe in hard work or affirmative action? Do you believe in school choice or dropout factories? Do you believe in Marco Rubio or Jesse Jackson? Take the test and remember the concept of peeling. We're not there for 80%, we're there for 20%. You get to 20%, we win. This is very, very important when you understand the peeling concept. So you're not there to pander. You're there to stand up for your values instead of caving in Washington every other week. So let me finish by saying this. If we ever got 20% of the black vote, 40% of the Hispanic vote, and a third of the Jewish vote, we got 31%, by the way, although in this county I'm sure we got higher, then they don't need to open the polls, and we're a permanent Republican majority. The Democrats have an unbroken string of creating poverty, destroying families, supporting dropout factories, discouraging investment, disarming law-abiding citizens, and other stuff that we all know. So my last thought, my most important thought, is that Republicans are the only chance our cities have. When we share the news, we will govern this whole country, every single state. Thank you and God bless.